The first thing I heard when I walked into my brother's engagement party was laughter that stopped the moment I stepped closer, not because I mattered, but because I was never supposed to hear it. It was the kind of laugh people use when they think they are safe, when they believe the room belongs to them. A soft, careless sound, followed by a whisper that drifted just far enough to reach me. Why did he even invite her? The words were light, almost playful, like an inside joke I was not meant to understand. I slowed my steps without meaning to, my heels sinking into the carpet as if the floor itself wanted me to stay exactly where I was. I could see her reflection in the mirrored wall, my brother's fiancée. Perfect hair, perfect posture, a champagne flute angled delicately in her hand. Her friends leaned in, smiling, waiting for her next line. I was already old news to them, an accessory, a background detail. I did not react. That has always been my advantage. The room was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, fresh flowers, arranged with mathematical precision, waitstaff moving like clockwork. Everyone assumed my brother had spared no expense. Everyone assumed this night was about romance and beginnings and family. I stood there quietly, absorbing the scene, feeling the familiar weight of being underestimated settle comfortably on my shoulders. My name is Elowen Hale. I have learned that names matter less than timing, and tonight, timing belonged to me. I was dressed simply on purpose. A clean black dress, no jewelry that caught the light, no designer labels announcing my presence. I had learned long ago that the quieter you look, the less people bother to question you. Around me, silk brushed against silk. Laughter rose and fell in polished waves. Her parents held court near the bar, speaking loudly about guest lists and future plans, already acting like this hotel was an extension of their living room. My brother stood beside her, smiling in that way he always had, proud and eager and utterly blind to the details that mattered. The staff moved differently around her, too attentive, too deferential. She noticed and leaned into it, enjoying the subtle power of being admired in public. When she laughed again, it was louder this time, and I watched a server flinch as her father snapped his fingers for another drink. No one corrected him. No one ever does when they assume they own the air. I drifted farther into the room, nodding politely at relatives who barely recognized me. Someone complimented my dress with the distracted kindness reserved for people you do not need anything from. Someone else asked if I was doing well, in that tone that means they have already decided the answer. I smiled, thanked them, said very little. Silence makes people careless. Every detail mattered. The way her mother scanned the room like she was evaluating inventory. The way my brother kept touching her hand as if reassuring himself this was real. The way the event manager hovered nearby, checking his tablet, unaware that every decision he made tonight would eventually circle back to me. They all believed they understood this place. They believed it existed for moments like this. I moved closer to the group where the whisper had started. I caught fragments of conversation, comments about seating, about guest lists, about who belonged where. She glanced at me briefly, her smile tightening just enough to confirm what I already knew. I was not part of her story. I was a loose thread she had not bothered to trim yet. That was fine. I took a glass of water from a passing tray and held it steady, watching the surface remain calm despite the noise around me. I had learned how to do that too. Stay still while everything else vibrates. Let people reveal themselves when they think no one important is watching. Tonight was supposed to be her celebration, their celebration. That was the lie everyone had agreed to believe. I let myself stand there a moment longer, letting the laughter settle into memory, letting the insult root itself exactly where I could feel it later. They thought I was invisible. They thought I was irrelevant. They had no idea why this hotel existed, or why I was here, or how much this night would cost them by the time it ended. People assume silence means absence. It does not. It means observation. When I rewind my life, it is not to ask for understanding or forgiveness. It is to show how the imbalance was built so carefully that no one noticed it forming. In my family, I was always the steady one, not the star, not the surprise. I was the one who remembered birthdays, smoothed arguments, showed up early, and stayed late. My brother was the light. He laughed louder, dreamed bigger, failed publicly, and was forgiven immediately. I learned early that someone had to be solid if someone else was going to shine. Responsibility found me young. When our parents struggled, I learned how to stretch groceries, how to say no to myself without bitterness, how to wait. I took jobs that paid steadily instead of impressively. I saved instead of spending. I listened more than I spoke. When opportunities came that required risk, I declined them with a smile and told myself later, always later. My brother never had to think that way. He chased ambition. I carried stability. It was an unspoken agreement that benefited everyone except me. The hotel did not arrive like a miracle. It came slowly, painfully, through discipline and timing and a refusal to announce myself before I was ready. I learned the industry from the inside. I invested quietly. I made mistakes privately. When I finally bought my first property, I did not tell my family. Not because I was hiding, but because I did not need applause to validate progress. I reinvested. I waited. I built layers that looked boring from the outside and powerful from within. Ownership, trusts, management structures, the kind of things people overlook because they do not sparkle. By the time this hotel became what it is now, I was already used to being overlooked. It was almost comforting. No one asked how I could afford it. No one questioned how it existed. They assumed investors. They assumed loans. They assumed anything except me. That is the danger of assumptions. They make people lazy. My brother's fiancée entered our lives like a revisionist historian. She arrived with confidence and opinions, and an effortless belief that whatever existed before her was irrelevant. She spoke often about family, about traditions she wanted to start, about how things should be done now. She did not ask questions. She rewrote. Suddenly, stories were retold with her at the center, and contributions made long before her arrival faded into the background. She spoke about my brother's success as if it had materialized the moment she noticed it. I watched all of this quietly. I watched her correct my mother, interrupt my father, and refer to my brother's childhood home as something quaint they would never return to. She smiled when she did it. That made it worse. Confidence without curiosity is a dangerous thing. It never checks the foundation before redecorating the house. What none of them ever bothered to learn was how much restraint it takes to build something without claiming it. How much patience it takes to let others believe a story that excludes you. I did not correct them when they spoke about the hotel as if it were a neutral space, a beautiful coincidence. I did not mention contracts or titles or decisions made years before she knew my name. I let her family discuss future events there as if it were already theirs to command. This chapter of my life is not loud. There are no confrontations here, no raised voices, just a steady tightening beneath the surface. Every dismissive comment added weight, every assumption layered pressure. The coil formed quietly, neatly, with no wasted motion. I knew what I held. I knew when it would matter, and I knew that the most dangerous moment is not when someone insults you. It is when they believe you are incapable of responding. As the night wore on, the party did what all careless celebrations do. It grew louder, looser, and crueler in small, precise ways. The whispers multiplied, no longer bothering to hide when I passed. Someone laughed too quickly after glancing at me. Someone else leaned away, as if proximity itself might be awkward. The humiliations were not dramatic enough to call out, which is exactly why they worked. A chair removed from a table before I arrived. A place card missing my name. A smile paired with a compliment that landed like an insult if you listened closely. Her mother perfected the art of dismissal. She spoke over me without apology, redirected conversations mid-sentence, introduced me to people who already knew exactly who I was, but had decided it did not matter. Her father was worse. He treated the staff like extensions of the furniture, snapping his fingers, demanding substitutions, insisting rules did not apply to him. I watched servers apologize for policies they had not created, watched managers bend in quiet panic. He spoke loudly about how events should be run, how things would be different once family took charge. Family. That word floated around the room like ownership already signed and sealed. The hotel staff tried their best to manage it gracefully. Years of training showed in their posture, their calm responses, the way they absorbed disrespect without reacting. I recognized that discipline. I had hired people like them. I had trained people like them. I noticed how often their eyes flicked toward the event manager, waiting for approval before enforcing a boundary. I noticed how often those boundaries dissolved under pressure from guests who assumed money gave them authority. I stood close enough to hear it all, far enough away to be ignored. That position has always been my advantage. Her friends gathered near the bar, laughing openly now, discussing wedding plans as if the building itself were part of the dowry. One of them commented on how generous the venue was, how lucky my brother was to have access to something so beautiful. Someone else joked about booking future anniversaries here at a discount. I smiled politely and said nothing. The truth does not need to interrupt arrogance while it is still gathering speed. Every so often, I let my gaze rest on details only I understood. The plaque near the entrance with a name most people never read, the corporate logo on the event paperwork that did not match the assumptions being made aloud, the layers beneath the surface, holding companies, management agreements, documents signed years before this woman ever practiced saying my brother's last name. Ownership rarely announces itself, it waits. The irony was almost elegant. The more they assumed, the deeper they went. Her father argued with the banquet captain about extending the event beyond contracted hours. Not defiance, documentation. Power often looks like noise. Real power looks like notes taken quietly. I caught my brother's eye across the room once. He smiled at me, distracted, happy in the way people are when they believe everything is finally aligning. I smiled back. He had no idea how much had already been set in motion, not against him, for truth. There is a difference, even if it hurts the same. Her mother leaned close to me at one point, her voice sweet and sharp. She asked if I was enjoying myself, then suggested I might be more comfortable nearer the exit where it was quieter. I thanked her and stayed exactly where I was. She frowned slightly, unused to resistance that did not announce itself. By then, the room felt tight with anticipation, not theirs, mine. Every careless word added pressure. Every assumption narrowed the options until only one outcome remained. I did not need to intervene. I did not need to warn anyone. Arrogance is efficient that way. It does most of the work itself. I held my glass, steady and untouched, and waited, because when people believe they already own the ground beneath their feet, they stop checking how deep the hole has become. By the time the toast was announced, the room was warm with champagne and certainty. Glasses clinked, conversations softened into expectant murmurs. My brother's fiancée moved toward the microphone with the ease of someone who believed every eye belonged to her. She adjusted her dress, smiled broadly, and waited for silence. It came instantly. She had trained them well. She began the way people always do in moments like this, with gratitude that sounded generous but cost her nothing. She thanked her parents for their guidance, her friends for their loyalty, the staff for their hard work. She thanked my brother, her voice dropping just enough to suggest intimacy, just enough to draw applause. The list was thorough and deliberate. I was not on it. That omission landed heavier than any insult. It told the room exactly where I stood without her having to say my name. Then she laughed lightly and added a joke, the kind that sounds harmless until it settles. She gestured vaguely toward the crowd and said how wonderful it was to celebrate surrounded by people who truly mattered, not extra guests who contributed nothing but atmosphere. Laughter rippled outward, polite at first, then freer as people took their cues from her smile. I felt the familiar urge rise, the instinct to correct, to interrupt, to reclaim the moment before it slipped too far. I did not move. Discipline is not passive. It is active restraint. It is choosing the long silence over the short satisfaction. I stood still, breathing evenly, reminding myself that premature action ruins clean endings. From the corner of my eye, I saw her mother nod approvingly. Her father lifted his glass, already convinced the night was a success. My brother clapped with everyone else, unaware of the blade hidden inside the joke. I let myself feel that too, the sharpness of being dismissed publicly, the old ache of being necessary but unacknowledged. I absorbed it and held it exactly where it belonged. Then I shifted my weight and caught the event manager's attention. It was nothing dramatic, no raised hand, no signal anyone else would notice. Just a brief meeting of eyes and a small nod. He stiffened slightly, recognition flickering across his face. He excused himself from the cluster of guests around him and moved toward me with practiced discretion. I leaned in and spoke quietly, my voice steady, precise. I asked him to bring the document we had discussed earlier, the one he kept in the office safe. He did not ask questions. He simply nodded and turned away, already moving. The room continued exactly as before. Applause faded, music swelled gently back into place. Guests resumed their conversations, buoyed by the assumption that the important moment had passed. Her family remained radiant, basking in their certainty. No one noticed the shift in the air. I watched my brother's fiancée step down from the microphone, accepting kisses and compliments, her confidence expanding with each one. She had no idea the ground beneath her heels had already been reassigned. That realization would come later. The minutes stretched. I felt them more than I counted them. This was the most difficult part, the waiting after the signal, before the consequence. It requires faith in preparation, faith in systems, faith that quiet authority moves faster than noise once it is engaged. The event manager returned, carrying a slim folder held close to his chest. He paused a few steps away, waiting for my cue. I met his gaze again and inclined my head slightly. He stopped, standing still, as if frozen in place by an instruction no one else could hear. Around us, laughter continued. Glasses were refilled. Plans were made aloud for the rest of the evening. Her father argued cheerfully with the server about extending the bar another hour. Her mother discussed floral arrangements for the wedding. Everything assumed continuity. I took a breath and stepped forward, not yet speaking, just entering the edge of the circle of attention. The room did not understand what was happening, but it was about to. I stepped forward before anyone realized a transition had occurred. That is how authority works when it is real. It does not announce itself. It simply occupies space and waits for others to adjust. The room quieted without instruction, attention bending in my direction because something in my posture suggested the night had changed shape. I did not smile. I did not apologize for interrupting. I spoke calmly, clearly, and without raising my voice. There is a particular stillness that settles when people sense paperwork is about to matter more than personality. I introduced myself again, not as a sister or a guest, but as the person whose signature governed the building they were standing in. I named the holding company. I named the trust. I referenced contracts executed years before this evening was ever imagined. Titles, deeds, management authority, not emotionally, legally. Truth does not need decoration. Her smile faltered first. It was subtle, a tightening around the eyes, a delay before comprehension. Her mother's expression followed, confusion breaking into disbelief. Her father attempted laughter, the reflex of someone accustomed to talking his way out of discomfort. He asked what this was about, his tone sharp, dismissive, already reaching for control that no longer existed. The event manager opened the folder and handed me the document. I did not look at it. I did not need to. I referenced it anyway, citing the clause that governed event termination in cases of misrepresentation and misconduct. I explained that the engagement party was concluded effective immediately. No raised voice, no anger, just procedure. The shift was visible, like a fault line finally giving way. Demands turned into questions. Questions turned into panic. Her father protested, insisting there had been some mistake, that this could not be happening. Her mother asked who she needed to speak to, still believing escalation would save her. Security appeared at the edges of the room, moving quietly, already briefed. My brother looked at me then, really looked at me, as if seeing a version of his sister he had never bothered to imagine. Understanding landed all at once, heavy and irreversible. He did not speak. He did not need to. The truth was faster than explanation. The bar closed, music stopped. Staff began clearing tables with the efficiency of people grateful to finally enforce rules. Accounts associated with the event were frozen pending review. Future bookings requested by her family were canceled without discussion. The room emptied not with drama, but with inevitability. One by one, guests were escorted out, murmuring confusion, glancing back as if the walls themselves had betrayed them. Her family argued until they realized there was no audience left. Authority dissolves quickly when it loses witnesses. She stood frozen near the microphone, the symbol of a moment she would never finish enjoying. When security approached her, she finally spoke my name. It sounded smaller than she expected. I did not respond. When the room was empty, I walked its perimeter slowly. I thanked the staff for their professionalism and told them to go home early. I stood alone beneath the chandeliers as the lights dimmed, reclaiming the space not with triumph, but with quiet certainty. This place had always been mine. Tonight simply made it visible. The damage was complete. No apologies would undo it. No explanations would soften it. There were no loose ends, no unresolved threads waiting for a sequel. Consequences had been delivered in full, properly filed, and irrevocably executed. Betrayal rarely announces itself. It whispers. It laughs when it thinks you are powerless. Revenge, when done right, is not loud or bloody or chaotic. It is patient. It is documented. It is inevitable. This was never about humiliation. It was about balance, about letting those who confuse arrogance with authority encounter the quiet weight of reality. Stories like this repeat everywhere, every day. Different faces, same patterns. There are always people watching, learning, waiting. And when the gavel finally falls, it sounds exactly like this.